Hey, howdy, hey, folks. It is Mrs. Johnson with the Agro Wisdom Channel again. We are talking about corn today. Very briefly, this comes specifically from a report I did in my bachelor's degree program. So, and corn is one of the largest crops produced, particularly in the US. So I figured we would cover it because a lot of this information is still relevant to what is happening in the world today when it comes to corn. So, corn, uh, technically, scientifically known as the maize, is has a basic introduction. Uh, a crop that requires 60 to 90 days to reach maturity. It originates in the Americas, I believe in the lower US, Mexico, Central America region, but don't quote me on that. Today, as of the time this report was written, um, the US was the largest producer globally. And within the US, Iowa was the largest producing state. Sacramento County was the largest producing uh, county of corn in California. And corn actually grows and develops in lots and lots of stages. I learned way too much about corn and spent the entire semester learning way too much about corn and driving tractors. It was one of the most niche, stereotypical semesters I ever had while studying agriculture, and it was wonderful and amazing. But let's see. So, you know, I can zoom in. Look at me. Um, Corn growth and development, right? So we start with the baby seed that germinates, creates cotyledons and stuff, cotyledons being the first leaves. And then we grow lots and lots of leaves, and then, right, the nth leaf stage. So VE all the way up to VT, those are vegetative stages labeled, right, by the leaf count. So V1 has one leaf, V2 has the second leaf, V4 has the fourth leaf, V6 has the sixth leaf, so on and so forth. VT is when the tassels start. So VT tassels. And then once the tassels form, tassels are actually the male reproductive part of corn. Um, Corn is wind pollinated, so the tassels on the top get shaken by the wind and falls onto the female reproductive part in R1, which is the ears of corn. Um, and that is and has the reproductive stages grow and or go further and further. You start looking at the corn kernel development, and you start developing it and then or start growing the kernels themselves, and then the corn starts filling them with sugars, and then it gets more like watery, and then it starts drying out, and then your last R6 stage is when it's completely dry and it's ready to be planted. A lot of corn that we eat, like on the cob and in cans, is harvested before that, but a lot of, at least in the US, but a lot of like corn flour and like livestock feed is harvested at that dried stage. Um, I was also going to say that the reason why corn is planted so close together and in such big groups, even in really small farms and like homesteads and things, is because it is wind pollinated. And it is wind pollinated, and the wind pollination is only effective within a certain like square footage. And you have to have enough pollen for a whole ear of corn to be effectively pollinated. And so you have to plant it really densely because of the way we've trained corn to grow through genetic selection, which is a whole nother conversation that we'll get into because the genetics is fun and cool. Now, let's talk about specifically the climate of corn. Corn has a human-dependent reproduction cycle. I started talking about that. You have to plant it really close. If you just like let corn do its thing, at least the corns that we grow in our backyards and commercially, it will not like reseed itself. It will not come back next year unless it, and if it does come back next year, it's not going to be effectively planted like at all, ever. Uh, it will not produce viable seed next year if it comes back because it won't, as I said, you have to plant it so close and so tightly together that it just won't really work. It is also adapted to lots and lots of places, depending on the varieties that you get. It can be dry farmed, it can be irrigated. Initially, I believe when humans first started domesticating corn, it was very much dry farmed. Ideally, for the best growth, or ideally in the agricultural world, temperatures should stay between 68 and 73 degrees Fahrenheit for corn. And for like ideal growth. Growth overall is limited between in any temperature below 41 degrees Fahrenheit and above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Totally apologize for those of you who use Celsius. I am but a simple American. I am going to stick to my guns, I guess, and use American stuff, measurements for now. Farming. So let's talk specifically about farming. Corn is typically seen as a summer crop here in the US because it is frost intolerant. It does not like frost. And that kind of gets shaky depending on where you are because it also doesn't like super, super hot heat. So sometimes it's a bumper crop, depending on where you are. Sometimes it's an early summer, late fall crop instead of like a traditional summer crop. It is also typically harvested, planted, all the things with commercial grain equipment. Hybrid vigor is super beneficial to corn. We see that throughout corn's domestic history. And its hybrid vigor, I think, was one of the biggest and first like innovations in the corn production in terms of seeding or like seeds stuff. It, I think, might have also been, if I remember right, according to this paper, hybrid vigor in corn specifically was one of the first crops that hybrid vigor was like very much seen in. Don't quote me on that though. I think. Uh, Specifically for corn, hybrid vigor increased production, so it made the corn ears bigger and the corn kernels themselves bigger, and it reduced pest and disease damage. And if I remember right, they like crossed a really good pest resistant and disease damaged one with a really good production one that had like really nice kernels or something, and they mixed them, and then they got like 150%, 200% like success on it on the hybrid vigor one. And they were like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to sell a bunch of this. And then they kept doing it in corn. And I think that's how hybrid vigor became so popular in crops. Don't quote me on that, though. I will read the rest of this paper for you at some point, and we will decide whether or not I'm saying accurate things. So, last but not least, before we leave, let's talk about some uses in corn. For the most part, corn is used in almost everything now, which is a lot of things. We feed it to livestock. I apologize for my timer. We feed it to livestock. We eat it. We use it in medicines. We export it. We use it in fuels, for like biofuels and stuff. We use it in our homes sometimes. There's some weird products that actually use corn byproducts, like um, we can use it for fun. A lot of like animal, like pet feed have corn in them, and I know some animals are allergic to, like cats, dogs have a hard time digesting grain, but it's in a lot of pet food, specifically pets that eat meat should be eating meat. And it's also used a lot in industrial stuff. Um, and I'll have to pull up more things that corn is used for, aside from going over this super, super brief thing. But without further ado, this quick video is over with hopefully less tangents than I planned. But tangents are fun because then I can go on more tangents. Anyway, thank you for learning some things today with me, and thank you for lending your ear, and we will see you sometime soon. Okay, bye. And now for the awkward Zoom pause.